From this point on, we will dive deeper into the comps analysis. We're going to focus on the 4 key areas of consideration that require our decision-making process and that require some careful thought. Number 1 is the type of multiples that we're going to use in comps valuations. So there are countless multiples to choose from. Of course, PE multiples or EV/EBITDA, these are the most well known, but there are a whole lot more types of multiples that exist. So the critical question here is, what are we going to use? So we have to understand the meanings, the advantages, the limitations of each multiple, and that's going to be the theme of our first discussion. Number 2 is selecting the comparable companies, or as we say, peers. In the earlier example, we used 3 competitors in the earliest example. And in our Tiffany case, we used 4 peers for comparison. Generally, how many competitors should be selected for trading comps? There's no right answer, but personally, I think that to ensure a reliable average, we need at least 3. So 2 is not necessary. 2 is not sufficient. We need at least 3 companies to make an average. But on the other hand, it's very uncommon to find 20 or 30 comparable companies for a single company. So, that can imply that the peers are not very similar to your target company. So in my personal opinion, I think maybe 5 to 10 companies is ideal, 5 to 10. But the minimum at 3, or maybe at maximum it can be around 15 cases. And maybe some industries, the peer selection is quite straightforward. So for instance, if you're to value AT&T, we have very straightforward competitors in each geographic market. That's the characteristic of the telecom industry. But on the other hand, back when I was at BCG, there was a project. We tried to find peers for the non-woven fabric industry. So we didn't even know what that was at the time, but finding the peers was extremely difficult. So for such niche, industries, identifying these peers becomes extremely challenging. So anyways, determining how to select appropriate peers. This is our second topic. Number 3, we're going to be deciding between trailing comps, so trailing multiples, and forward multiples. So for example, when using an EV/EBITDA multiple, there's no debate that enterprise value, it should be the current or most recent value. So usually we base it on the closing price of the day before. However, when it comes to EBITDA, what are we going to use? Are we going to use the past 12 months? Are we going to use the most recent fiscal year? Are we going to use future, the next 12 months, or a projection for the next year? So trailing comps, trailing multiples, they rely on historical data, while forward multiples, the denominator is usually based on future projections. So understanding this difference and applying it correctly, it can be significantly important in comps valuations. So this is going to be another critical point of discussion and our third topic in our comps valuation course. And lastly, the fourth and final consideration, it involves ensuring that the target company and its peer companies are truly comparable under identical conditions. So, we have the phrase apple to apple. We need, when we're comparing stuff, it has to be apple to apple. For proper comparison, the financial metrics, especially when it comes to net income, it should be prepared under the same conditions. For example, if you have one company that uses IFRS and one company that uses US GAAP, can we say that the net income is an apple-to-apple comparison? Well, it's not. So there are numerous cases like, are we going to capitalize R&D costs? Are we going to expense them? We have issues like FIFO and LIFO. We have lease issues, how to treat lease expenses. Things like those, they make balance sheets and income statements very difficult to compare to each other. So in such cases, we might have to need to adjust the target's financials to the peer companies, or maybe it's going to be the other way around. So this process, while it's very critical, it requires some significant knowledge and it needs a lot of experience as well. So I can say that it's very complex. But anyways, it represents our fourth topic and final topic of the comps analysis course. So from now on, let's dive deeper into these 4 considerations. Let's examine each one in greater detail and let's get started.